My stepdaughter mocked me for not having my own kids. She said I was only useful as a bed warmer for her mom, and she is happy her mom is even cheating on me with a better man. When I questioned my wife, she denied and said her daughter was just being a silly adolescent. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Alan Wealth from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I always knew I wasn't Lila's favorite person. She was 15 when I married her mother, Anita, already hardened by the divorce, suspicious of any man who dared to enter her mother's orbit. I tried, though. God, did I try. Birthdays, holidays, weekend getaways. I bent over backward to be present, to be kind, to offer guidance without trying too hard. I knew I'd never be her father, and I didn't want to replace him, just be someone reliable. But some kids see patience as weakness. Some see kindness as currency. Lila saw me as disposable. Still, nothing prepared me for what she said that night. We were in the kitchen, just the two of us. Anita was out, supposedly at a late business dinner with Jerome, her cousin. I was chopping vegetables, planning dinner for the three of us like I usually did. Lila sat at the bar stool across from me, scrolling through her phone, uninterested in conversation until, out of nowhere, she looked up and smirked. "You ever think it's weird you never had your own kids?" she asked. I paused, knife in midair. "Not really," I said, forcing a light tone. She laughed, mean, sharp. "Of course not. You're just the bed warmer. Mom says you're good for that, at least." The floor dropped out from under me. My fingers tightened around the knife handle, but I didn't let her see anything crack. She tilted her head and added, "Anyway, I'm glad she's with someone better now. Someone she actually likes." She said it like she was doing me a favor. A courtesy, even. I nodded slowly, pretended her words didn't matter, even smiled like I was in on the joke. But inside, something in me buckled. I finished cooking, set the table, and didn't say a word to Anita when she walked in late, cheeks flushed, smelling faintly of wine and unfamiliar cologne. She greeted me with a kiss, casual, distracted. I asked how the meeting went. "Exhausting," she sighed, rubbing her temples. "Jerome talks too much." I offered her a glass of water and said nothing more. That night, while she showered, I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I just began to think. Quietly, carefully, the way a man does when the puzzle pieces begin to fall into place. In the days that followed, I replayed the last 7 years in my mind like a movie. Every business deal I helped her and Jerome secure, every weekend she claimed to be at retreats, every time she dismissed my concerns about her late nights. And Lila, she had always been a little too smug, a little too cruel, but I chalked it up to teenage angst. Now I saw it differently. She knew. Maybe she always had. And now, she wasn't hiding it because, in her eyes, I didn't matter anymore. I was just the fool who funded their lives, the safe harbor they could mock behind closed doors. The betrayal didn't hit me all at once. It came in waves. But I didn't yell. I didn't throw accusations. I didn't become the angry, betrayed husband. I played it cool. I kept making dinner. I kissed Anita goodbye in the mornings. I paid the bills, smiled during family brunches, even laughed at Lila's sarcastic jabs. But under it all, I was gathering strength. I was watching, and I was done pretending not to see the cracks in the foundation I had built for them. I told myself I needed proof, not just gut feelings. So I hired a private investigator. Quietly, discreetly. I told him everything, the names, the patterns, the travel dates. I gave him the kind of information only a husband who had paid too much attention would know. And then I waited. The report came in a slim manila envelope. Unmarked, anonymous, the kind of thing you see in thrillers where secrets are traded like currency. I picked it up from the P.O. box I'd rented a town over. I remember my hand shaking, not from fear, but anticipation. I wasn't hoping for the worst, but I was ready for it. Back at home, I sat at the desk in the garage, the only place that still felt like mine. I unfolded the pages slowly, one by one. Photos of Anita and Jerome holding hands at some outdoor cafe, receipts from a shared hotel suite in Charleston, text message transcripts that left no room for interpretation. 7 years. 7 goddamn years. She had been mine for 10, but she'd only really belonged to me for 3. The rest, she was his. They both had been playing a game I didn't even know I was part of. And I, idiot that I was, had been funding the whole thing like a sponsor too blind to know when he was being used. When I finally stood up from that desk, I didn't feel broken. I felt clean, like something heavy had finally been carved out of me. The part of me that had made excuses, that had hoped, that had wanted her love to be enough, it was gone. All that remained now was a need for clarity and confrontation, but not with rage. I wasn't going to scream or throw her things out on the lawn. I'd been humiliated quietly. I would return the favor in kind. That evening, I made her favorite pasta. I set the table with candles, even opened a bottle of the wine we'd been saving for our next anniversary. I needed her relaxed, unguarded. As we ate, she talked about the stress at work, how she and Jerome had been butting heads over the new investors. I nodded along. Do you ever think Jerome's too involved? I asked casually, twirling spaghetti around my fork. She blinked. What do you mean? I shrugged. You spend a lot of time with him. I know you said he's your cousin, but sometimes it feels different. She froze for just a second, just long enough. He's family, she said, her voice light, but her eyes cautious. Don't be ridiculous. Then she laughed. Besides, you've always been the jealous type. That word, jealous, landed like a slap. I smiled. I guess I just worry, I said. Lila made a comment the other day. Something about you and him being more than family. Her face changed. Not shock, not denial, just annoyance. She's being a silly adolescent, she said, pouring herself more wine. She likes to stir drama, and she knows how insecure you can be. Insecure, jealous, ridiculous. The trifecta of gaslighting. I nodded slowly, the way someone does when they know the game is already over but haven't said the final word yet. You're probably right, I murmured. I'm probably just being silly. After dinner, she kissed me on the cheek, said she was tired, and went upstairs. I stayed behind, staring into the half-empty wine glass, watching the candle flame flicker and die. I thought about all the nights I'd waited for her, all the loans I had guaranteed for their business, the contracts I'd helped draft, the clients I'd introduced them to. All those years, she had been building a life with him on the foundation of my loyalty. And yet, she still sat across from me with the audacity to pretend it was all in my head. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Not about the divorce. Not yet. That would come later. I needed to prepare. Protect myself. Secure what was mine. First, I had him help me transfer my personal assets, property, shares, savings, into a trust. All clean, all legal, but inaccessible to AITA. Just in case. Then I started doing research on their company, the one I had bankrolled, the one Jerome had wormed his way into under the guise of family partnership. I knew the operations. I'd signed off on many of the documents. And now I was going to use that knowledge, not just to protect myself, but to dismantle everything they'd built off my back. But I moved slowly, carefully. AITA didn't suspect a thing. She still kissed me goodnight, still smiled when I handed her a coffee in the morning. And Lila, well, she avoided me more than usual, maybe sensing something had shifted. Her snide remarks grew less frequent, more cautious. She still had her phone, her credit card, her tuition paid, but she'd noticed the silence. The stillness. The kind that comes before the storm. I stopped trying to fix what was broken. I stopped asking for answers I already knew. I started playing the part of the man they thought I was clueless, soft, harmless. But underneath, I was preparing for war. A quiet war. One they wouldn't even know they were losing until it was far too late. Truth isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It seeps in like a slow leak, staining everything before you even notice. When the investigators sent the final dossier, I knew it wasn't going to surprise me. I'd already braced myself, already grieved the loss of something I once called love. Still, holding the folder in my hands, knowing it was the final nail in the coffin, I felt something hollow open up in my chest. Not sadness, not anger, just a vacuum where belief used to live. I flipped through the documents methodically, as if reading someone else's story. Dates, hotel invoices, surveillance photos. Grainy but unmistakable. Anita in a black coat, her hand tucked into Jerome's, laughing like she didn't have a husband waiting for her at home. Another shot, them leaving a weekend resort. The same weekend she told me she was at a conference in New Jersey. Lies stacked like bricks. 7 years of it. 7 years of sharing a bed with someone whose heart was never in the room. I sat with the evidence all night. Didn't sleep. Didn't eat. Just watched the hours crawl past while my mind did the arithmetic of betrayal. 7 years of investment, emotional, financial, psychological. I thought of every time Anita cried about stress when Jerome left town. Every business dinner where I was told I wasn't needed. I remembered one Christmas when Jerome had shown up, last minute, and Anita insisted he had nowhere else to go. He's family, she said. What are we if not the kind of people who take care of our own? I had given him a damn gift that year. A leather briefcase. He looked me in the eye and said, "You're a good man, brother." And I'd believed him. That memory hit hardest. The audacity. The sheer performance of it all. I wasn't just deceived. I was actively humiliated. The worst part wasn't even the affair, it was the partnership. I had backed their dreams, built their foundation, vouched for loans they couldn't get without my credit. The warehouse lease, the equipment financing, even their early investors, they all came through me. I had been the engine running their enterprise, and all the while, they were celebrating behind my back. The company I had poured my resources into was no longer mine in any real way. They'd iced me out subtly over time, decisions made without me, changes approved when I wasn't in the room. And now, with the evidence in hand, I saw the full design. I wasn't a partner. I was an ATM with a pulse. A cover. A pawn. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I planned. First, I confirmed ownership documents, asset trails, anything that could still tie me to the business. I realized quickly that while they had maneuvered to minimize my control, they hadn't done it cleanly. Their arrogance had left trails. I still had legal hooks into several accounts, particularly through a silent partner clause Anita had me sign early in our marriage. She never expected I'd read the fine print. But I had to. Back then, out of trust. Now, out of vengeance. The clause gave me leverage. Enough to shake the tree, if I wanted to. Next, I visited our accountant under the guise of a routine portfolio review. I asked about the health of the business, got the numbers, the weaknesses, the liabilities. They've been spreading thin, he told me. Expansion too fast. Not enough liquidity. I smiled. That'll be useful, I said, and left him a little too fast. If he suspected anything, he didn't say a word. People like him never ask. They just move numbers, watch clients fall in and out of fortune. Then came the hardest part, facing Anita while knowing everything. I wanted to call her a liar to her face, drag the truth out of her with fury. But I didn't. Instead, I asked her to have dinner with me, just the two of us. She wore that red dress I used to love. Jerome's favorite, I realized now. You've been so sweet lately, she said, touching my hand across the table. It's like you're finally back to the man I married. I stared at her fingers, her ring, the skin I had once touched with awe. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I said. About us. About our future. She smiled, sipped her wine. That's good. We deserve to be happy. I nodded, letting the silence stretch. Tell me something, I said. If you could do it all over again, would you still choose me? Her eyes searched mine for a second, too long. Of course, she said, but her voice was brittle. Uncertain. I leaned back. I hope so, because I did everything I could for this marriage. She said nothing, just smiled, but her hand slipped from mine. Later that night, I opened a new account under a different name, began setting up a shell corporation, one I would use to quietly start buying up shares when the opportunity came. Because it would come. I was going to bring them down. Not in a flash. Not with drama. But with precision. They had spent years building something on top of me. It was time I took it back, piece by piece. They had underestimated me. And now, they would pay. Revenge isn't loud. It's not fireworks and screaming matches. It's silence, strategy, and patience. And I had learned patience the hard way. 10 years of marriage had taught me how to wait, how to keep my face calm while my heart burned. So when the time came to retaliate, I didn't make a scene. I made a plan. Every move I made in those weeks felt surgical, precise, deliberate. I wasn't just angry. I was calculating. I had built this house of cards with them, And now I was going to pull out the foundation and watch it collapse, one lie at a time. The first step was moving everything I owned into a trust Anita couldn't touch. It was a long, tedious process, but I didn't flinch. I worked with an attorney who specialized in high-stakes divorce protection. He was discreet and unervingly efficient. "You're not the first," he said, glancing over her financial disclosures. "But you'll be one of the few who walks away clean." I nodded, deadpan. "I don't want clean," I said. "I want scorched earth." He raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. Maybe he saw too many men like me. Too many who got used, betrayed, and then woke up ready to reclaim what they had lost. Or maybe he just didn't care. Either way, he got it done. Next came the company. I knew it from the inside out. The vulnerabilities, the weak spots, the secrets they didn't want anyone seeing. I still had access to the private cloud where they stored internal documents. Sloppy. I found records they'd never want exposed. Inflated invoices, investor manipulations, unregistered vendor payments. All I had to do was package it the right way. I created a dummy email account and sent the file to a journalist who specialized in corporate fraud. Not the big leagues, just a local business paper desperate for a scoop. Within a week, headlines popped up. Emerging boutique firm under investigation for financial irregularities. The fallout was immediate. Investors panicked. Stockholders pulled out. Their value dropped by nearly 70% in 4 days. It was chaos, just the way I wanted it. While they scrambled to do damage control, I quietly bought up shares through the shell corporation I had created weeks earlier. I watched the numbers fall like leaves in autumn, slow and unstoppable. And when the dust started to settle, I held enough leverage to call in votes, change bylaws, and begin taking control. It wasn't just revenge, it was reclamation. I wasn't just punishing them. I was taking back what they had built on my bones. Anita called me 2 days into the crisis, voice strained. "Did you see the news?" she asked, trying to sound calm. I played dumb. "No. What happened?" She hesitated. "It's about the company. There's been some kind of leak. I don't know how, but You'll figure it out," I said, and hung up. That was the last time I lied to her. The rest would be the truth, and she wouldn't like a word of it. By the end of the second week, I scheduled a meeting with her and Jerome under the guise of a legal review. We met in a small boardroom downtown. They looked tired, nervous, but still defiant. Jerome had the gall to speak first. "We've been blindsided. This could ruin everything." I nodded. "Yeah, that's the point." Anita blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" I laid out the documentation, proof of their affair, the business manipulation, the asset funneling. Then I slid the newly signed share transfer documents across the table. "I own your company now," I said. "Or what's left of it." Jerome stood up, red-faced. "You son of a—" I raised a hand. "Don't. Sit down and shut up." Anita looked like she'd swallowed glass. "You planned this," she whispered. I stared at her for a long moment. "You think I didn't know? 7 years. You didn't even have the decency to lie well." Her face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she might cry. But I didn't care. I had no empathy left to give. "I'm divorcing you," I said calmly. "And I've already moved everything. You'll get nothing but your own guilt." I turned to Jerome. "And you? You're finished. The board will vote you out. You're a liability now." He started to protest, but Anita grabbed his arm, defeated. She knew it was over. Not just the company, the life, the charade. I walked out of that room with no regrets. Just clarity. The kind that comes after a long storm finally breaks and the sun hits your face for the first time in days. I wasn't the fool anymore. I was the reckoning they never saw coming. It wasn't the silence that surprised me, it was how comfortable it became. After everything, after the confrontation, the divorce papers, and the company takeover, I expected noise. Rage. Screaming voicemails. Threats. But there was none of that. Just quiet. A cold, eerie quiet. Anita didn't call. Jerome vanished from the company the same day the vote went through. And Lila, she didn't say a word. Not for 3 days. Then, out of nowhere, a text. "I need money for my books." As if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't stood in my kitchen weeks ago and mocked me for being childless, for being used. I stared at that text for a long time. No anger. Just a flat, heavy certainty. Then I replied with 2 words. Not anymore. That was when the flood came. First Anita, she showed up at the house. I saw her through the window before she even rang the bell. No makeup, hair unwashed. I sunken like someone who hadn't slept. I opened the door, but only slightly. Please, she said, voice shaking. We were stupid. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I said nothing. She stepped forward, and I didn't move. I made a mistake. I lost myself. I still said nothing. She looked around the entryway like she was trying to breathe in the life she'd left behind. Lila misses you. She's just a kid. She didn't mean what she said. I almost laughed at that. She meant every word, I said. And so did you, when you spent 7 years lying to my face. She opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. Don't explain. I'm done listening. She stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked down the steps slowly, shoulders hunched like someone carrying the weight of every lie she thought would never catch up. Then it was Lila's turn. She came 2 days later, school bag slung over her shoulder, fake confidence pasted on her face. I can't pay for this semester without you, she said. You're still listed as my sponsor. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. I took care of that. Her eyes narrowed. You're just doing this to get back at Mom. I shook my head. No. I'm doing this because you looked me in the eye and laughed. Because you said I was just a bed warmer. Because you enjoyed my humiliation. She shifted uncomfortably. I was angry. You were honest, I said. And I believed you. She blinked, unsure how to respond. So that's it, she asked. You're just going to pretend I don't exist? I looked at her for a long moment. No, I said. I'm just done pretending we were ever family. She left with tears in her eyes. But I didn't chase her. I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel bad either. I just felt finished. A week later, I received a call from a private number. I let it go to voicemail. When I checked it, it was Jerome. His voice was tight, barely containing his rage. You think you've won, but you haven't. You just proved you're the bitter one. You're alone now. Enjoy your little empire. It's built on ashes. I deleted the message. He was wrong about one thing. I wasn't bitter. I was free. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't walking on eggshells, bending to keep the peace, funding lives that were built on lies. I was alone, yes, but not lonely. There's a difference. One is painful. The other is peaceful. The fallout wasn't just personal. Their reputations took a hit. The investor community pulled back. Clients left. Even the employees, many of whom I treated better than they ever did, sent quiet emails of thanks. We knew something wasn't right, one had written. But you always treated us with respect. Glad to see you back in charge. That message stuck with me. Not because it flattered me, but because it reminded me that I had spent so long in the shadows, letting them lead, letting them shine. And all along, I was the one holding everything up. Anita tried once more, an email this time. Long apologetic. Rambling. She talked about her childhood trauma, her fear of failure, how Jerome had manipulated her emotions. She said she never stopped loving me, that we could still fix things, that maybe therapy would help. I read it twice, not out of hope, but out of disbelief. Not once in her letter did she say she loved me for who I was. Only that she loved how safe I made her feel. How comfortable. That's what I had been to her, comfort. A cushion. A safety net. Never a partner. Never an equal. I didn't respond. Some doors don't deserve to be reopened. Solitude didn't come like I expected. I thought it would be loud, full of echoes, like the kind of silence that wraps around a house when everyone's gone and the air still remembers their voices. But it wasn't like that. It was soft. Clean. Like a room finally cleared of clutter. Like breathing without obstruction. I woke up the first morning after the final paperwork had been signed. The divorce official, the company in my name, the phone lines cut, the past legally severed, and I made coffee in silence. No second cup. No extra slice of toast. Just me. For a long time, I stood by the window and watched the morning light creep over the lawn. The same lawn I used to mow for a family that never really existed. And I felt, of all things, relieved. People think rage is the climax of betrayal, but it's not. It's clarity. The realization that you're no longer responsible for someone else's illusion. I used to contort myself to keep Anita happy, to give Lila the sense of stability she lost after her father left. I showed up, even when I wasn't invited in. I tried to become something for them that I didn't even believe I deserved. A father, a provider, a man who could heal what he didn't break. And when they laughed at my efforts, when they turned me into the punchline of their private jokes, I thought I was weak for staying. But the truth is, I was strong for surviving it. I don't speak to Anita anymore, not even through lawyers. The last of our financial ties were untangled, and she walked away with far less than she expected. She fought for more, of course, claimed contributions, emotional distress, even tried to argue that I had ruined her career by leaking those documents. But the paper trail was clean, the signatures legal, and the law doesn't protect the fraudulent. Jerome tried to sue too. His case was dismissed in 2 hearings. Last I heard, he moved out of state, started a consulting gig with some second-rate firm. The man once so smug at my dinner table, now a ghost in an industry that barely remembered him. Lila sent one final message, a photo of her university deregistration notice, captioned simply, "Thanks for ruining my future." I didn't reply. Her future wasn't mine to ruin. I had funded it, yes. I had paid for her comfort, her education, her security. But she destroyed the bridge between us with her own mouth. I wasn't her enemy, I was her mirror. And she couldn't stand what she saw. I hope she learns one day that biting the hand that feeds you only leaves you hungry. But that lesson's hers to carry. I started traveling. Short trips, nothing dramatic. A cabin by the lake in Vermont. A coastal drive through Oregon. I didn't go to find myself, that's a phrase people use when they're running. I wasn't running. I was rebuilding. I brought books. A journal. I spent hours walking with no destination, eating alone without apology, and waking up to birdsong instead of cold indifference. Somewhere along the way, I realized something important. I hadn't failed. I had been lied to, manipulated, taken for granted, but I hadn't failed. I had shown up with love. I had given more than most people ever would. I had been the honest one in a house full of actors. And now, the curtain had dropped. I bought a smaller place. Just enough space for one. A study, a kitchen with a proper gas range, a porch that catches the evening sun. I filled it with things that felt like mine, old jazz records, heavy books, quiet colors. There's no family photo on the wall, no framed certificate of marriage, just peace. That's the prize people don't talk about when they talk about starting over. Peace isn't flashy. It's not the new car, the revenge body, the Instagram glow-up. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you don't owe anyone your silence anymore. Sometimes, I think about that first night Lila mocked me. The words still sting, not because they were true, but because I let them hang in the air unanswered. I let her talk to me like I didn't matter. Like I wasn't a man who had given 10 years to a broken family and still showed up with kindness. But I've stopped blaming myself for that. I don't need children to feel whole. I don't need a wife to feel worthy. I just need truth. And now, I have it. I ended this story not with fire, but with stone. Solid. Steady. Unmoving. Anita and Lila can have their memories, their stories, their spin on what happened. I don't need to defend myself anymore. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. And I'm done waiting for apologies that were never meant to come. I sit on my porch some nights and think about how strange it is to be content. How strange it is to have nothing and still feel full. But then I remember, this isn't nothing. This is everything I chose. Everything I reclaimed. Everything that was mine. If this story moved you or made you reflect on the quiet strength it takes to reclaim your worth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps bring more powerful, real-life stories like this to the channel, and we'd love to hear what boundaries you've had to set in your own journey. See you soon in the next story.